Hi, friends. I'm so glad you are here. Thank you so much for listening. You guys, I am so overwhelmed with gratitude for every single person that is here. I can't even explain it. I went to bed crying last night because I just feel so overwhelmed with support and love. And I just have to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for being here. So last week we dove into my story and where I realized that, holy hell, I have so much work to do. So we've all heard these terms, cycle breaker, healing journey. But what does that actually mean? And more importantly, how do we actually do it? But here's the thing. I used to think that recognizing my toxic patterns was enough to change them. And boy, I was wrong. It wasn't until I hit rock bottom, completely drained, stuck in cycles I swore I would never repeat, that I realized something so crucial about your healing journey. You cannot think or recognize your way out of trauma. You actually have to rewire your nervous system and reprogram your subconscious. And most of us are completely running on autopilot, repeating the same cycle over and over and over again. And not because we even want to, but because that is how our subconscious is wired. And all of the awareness in the world, I realized, would not help me from repeating the past. So we're going to go all in on how we can actually rewire our subconscious. But before we get to that, today we are going to dive in on how the hell do we even recognize these patterns in the first place? Because we all know you can't change what you can't recognize. So let's dive into it. So the first step in breaking the cycle is recognizing the patterns that you repeat. Whether it's emotional, relational, or behavioral, you have to be able to recognize these toxic patterns that you keep repeating. But that probably leads you to wondering, how the heck do I even recognize my own toxic pattern? We have to, number one, look for repetition. If you find that you keep constantly going back through the same situation or even same type of relationships, that's a sign. Or maybe you keep attracting the same type of toxic people or experiencing some of the same challenges with multiple friendships, or even, which we all fall short in, falling into the same negative thought process and patterns. Number two, pay attention to your emotional triggers. Recognizing my triggers, I felt like was one of the key points in my healing journey. Triggers aren't just random emotions that pop up here and there. They are literally signals from your past telling you where your wounds are that still need healing. And I think a huge part for me was I had to realize it wasn't anybody else's responsibility not to trigger me and to tiptoe and walk on eggshells around my triggers. When I learned to recognize that and recognize my triggers, instead of just reacting, it gave me permission to pause, reflect, and to choose a different response. And that gave me my power back. And don't get me wrong, I still get triggered all of the freaking time. And, sometimes I fall short and react. In fact, more often than I would like to, which is why we're learning this together. But this is where the real growth happens. Instead of repeating your past cycles of how you react, you are literally rewiring your brain to become the person that you want to be. And to me, every time I choose to respond differently, I'm choosing to heal. And I just think there's so much power in that. And don't get me wrong, it's not avoiding your triggers, okay? Avoiding your triggers is literally a trauma response. So we can't confuse the two here. And that took me years to learn too, because if you know me, you know I'm a block, snip, cut them off, run from them, run from the trigger type of person. I'm still choosing to have to respond and react differently because my automatic response is to either fight or flight. And so we have to recognize we can't run from our triggers, okay? We have to use every trigger as an opportunity. We have to use it as a tool to get to know ourselves and to actually break free from our old patterns. And I'll just admit, one of my biggest triggers, to be honest, is going back to my hometown. I would go there and I would immediately be so triggered by the house, by the smells, by the streets, by the environment, people who have hurt me in the past, that we have unresolved conflict. I mean, I just felt like I was one massive ticking bomb. And then when I would come home, it would take me out. It would take me weeks to feel like I was something more than trauma again. And none of that was anybody else's responsibility. To be different, to show me more kindness and love, to walk on eggshells around me. And finally, I just got tired of my own shit. I was just like, I want to be able to go to my own hometown and I want to be there and I want to enjoy my time and I want to be able to come home without needing to recover from my quote unquote vacation. And so I had to really self-reflect on what I could recognize about my own triggers and use them as an opportunity and a tool to get to know myself better and to heal and to dig up those wounds. Like, what is it about going back there that is honestly so traumatizing for me? And oftentimes I would end up in fights with family and, it just wasn't healthy. It wasn't good and it wasn't healthy. And the only healing journey I'm responsible for is my own. And so taking accountability of my own triggers, not only did it give me permission to heal, but it gave me my power back. Because whenever I would go home, I would feel powerless. I would feel worthless, powerless, and I'd end up in stupid power struggles with people who are on different healing journeys than my own. So what I want to say is self-reflecting on your triggers can be one of the most important ways that you can start your healing journey. A next one on how to recognize the toxic cycles is pay attention to your self-talk. Are you constantly thinking things like, I'm not good enough? I don't deserve love. Why do I always fail? These type of beliefs are really deep-rooted in unhealthy patterns. So it's so important to pay attention to how you talk to yourself. And that leads me to the next one. Pay attention to your self-sabotage, which researching this one was so interesting for me because I guess I've never really fully understood what self-sabotage was until deep diving into this episode. Self-sabotage is so much procrastination and avoidance. What? That was such an aha moment for me. Because I've always been the type that's like, I don't self-sabotage myself. And then I started deep diving in self-sabotage and realized, oh my goodness, I self-sabotage all of the time. My mindset about self-sabotage was really based off relationships, right? Which is true. Pushing people away before they can get too close and hurt you. But it's also procrastinating on important tasks, avoiding opportunities. And all of this is deeply rooted in the fear of failure, which shockingly is a fear of success. Sometimes we just don't believe we deserve the success. So we self-sabotage it by procrastinating and avoiding. So this is another pattern that you have to look at yourself and say, is this something that I'm repeating? Because recognizing is the first step to healing. And another is reflect on how you cope with past trauma. Ooh, goodness. All of these are just like a knife straight to the heart. We oftentimes develop really toxic coping skills for our past trauma, such as drinking, overeating, a huge one, people pleasing. We find so many toxic ways to cope because we feel it's easier to manage the pain instead of facing it and feeling it. So we have to recognize what ways in our life are we using toxic coping mechanisms in order to numb the pain. And lastly, listen to the feedback from others. Sometimes we are so close to our own patterns that we can't even see them. So if we have other people constantly pointing out toxic behavior that they see from us or express their concern, it's worth considering that maybe these are toxic patterns that you're struggling with. And recognizing that can be such a leap in your healing journey. Here are some examples. You always shut down when things get tough. You just don't seem to value yourself. You talk to yourself so negatively. Don't say that. Why are you comparing? You seem to compare a lot. It's really hard to take advice from somebody that you wouldn't want to ever be in their shoes. And I get that. I've seen that. We've all seen that phrase all over social media. But I think a lot of the time we can deflect negative feedback instead of understanding that even with the worst criticism, maybe there's some truth in that. So it's worth taking and considering and taking a deep dive and looking at yourself. And you want to know what one of my feedbacks that I've heard my whole life? Gosh, you're so aggressive. Yes, I am. And I like to call it passionate. But you know what? I can be super aggressive, and it's something that I've had to learn. And I've had to take so much feedback from all sorts of people who don't like me, people who do like me. And when you hear it enough over and over, you have to know that there's some truth in it. And so I've had to work years on making myself assertive and not aggressive. So we all hear feedback we don't like, but a lot of times there's truth in it. So we have to pay attention. And with that, takeaway number 2, give yourself permission to heal. Once you've been able to identify your toxic patterns and behavior, the next step is giving yourself permission to heal. It may sound so simple, but I'm telling you, this was a game changer for me. So many of us are so quick to forgive others, right? But we forget to show ourselves that same compassion. And healing isn't a reward. It's a necessity. And oftentimes we feel so unworthy of healing. And we're taught to push through it, don't feel it, please other people without addressing it. Giving yourself permission to heal is recognizing that healing is not a luxury. Healing is necessary for growth. So you have to let go of the guilt and the shame. When I chose to cut off my mom for good, it was probably some of my darkest days, especially with the guilt and the shame. Cutting off your parent is already an extremely difficult decision, okay? And for most of us, it was not our first decision. In fact, it is the very last decision. And we have tried literally everything to make a relationship work. But at the end of the day, no child wants to cut off their parent. And it comes with already making that decision so much guilt and shame. But what makes it even harder is the weight of everybody else's opinion. The judgment, the unsolicited advice, the subtle yet not so subtle comments. And oh boy, I can't even tell you about the guilt trips, okay? So many guilt trips. And it's not just people who've never experienced trauma that give you this guilt trip and the shame-based comments. I mean, so much of it comes from people who are still in the cycle and don't know how to break it and can't believe that you're breaking it. And they end up making you the problem. And you end up getting smacked with Bible verses about honoring your father and your mother. And, but you only have one mom. Like, how could you do that to your mother? And let's not forget. Well, don't you know that family is everything? And it makes you question yourself. It makes you question your experiences and your decisions. And that is where so much guilt and shame comes from. At least that's where it came from for me. But here is the hard truth. No one has ever lived your experience. And no two siblings have ever been raised by the same parents. And what they don't understand is cutting off an abusive parent is not about trying to be cruel and oh, I'm just going to pay back. This is going to hurt them because they hurt me. This is about choosing my peace and choosing my worth. And I had to learn that I could not break the cycle if I continued to try to heal in the same place that broke me. And I had to protect myself and my kids. And so shame and guilt can make you feel like you have done something wrong. But you need to know, if you are in my shoes and you've made a hard decision like that you didn't make the wrong choice. You made the necessary one. Healing is not pretty. And not everybody is going to understand. And that's okay. So it's time for you to stop carrying the burden of guilt and shame, for you choosing your well-being first. So how do we let go of that shame? How do we let go of the guilt? How do we let go of the shame? First, recognize that shame is a freaking liar. Healing is not about fixing what's broken. It's about becoming. It's about finding wholeness again. And I just want to say, you are not defined by your past experiences. So you have to learn to challenge those self-sabotaging, shame-based thoughts in your head. Practice self-compassion and affirmations that you are worthy of being loved. You are worthy of love and happiness and healing. You are not the sum of your trauma. You're worthy of peace and a joyful life. When those self-sabotaging, shame-based thoughts come into your head, I want you to do these 4 things, okay? First of all, recognize the thought. You have to be aware of the thought. And next, number 2, question the thought, because not all of your thoughts are truth. So ask yourself, is this 100% true? Would I tell this to a friend? Is there another way to look at this? For an example, oh my goodness, I always mess things up. Good grief. Catch the thought. Rephrase it. I made a mistake. You know what? I'm going to do better next time. Instead of forcing toxic positivity, I hate that. Find a realistic and compassionate way to reframe your thought. And if you need to do this, seeing everything on paper helps. I don't know the science. We'll dive into that one day. But write it down, because seeing it and writing it will help you believe it. And number 4, take action. If you think you're not capable of doing something, do something small to prove yourself wrong. Our thoughts impact our emotions, and our emotions impact our action. So once you've reframed your thought, I want you to take action. And our number 3 takeaway, this one is my personal favorite, realizing your fear of change. There's a lot of fear in change. There's a lot of fear in personal growth and healing. In reality, change means you're leaving a whole life behind. The whole version of you that has existed all of these years. You're leaving that behind. You're leaving your old thinking patterns, the way that you behave, and honestly, unknown territory is terrifying, right? But what if I told you that facing those uncomfortable things is one of the best ways to move forward? In fact, it's one of the only ways to truly create the life that you love. So, what do we got to do? We have to release the fear of changing, okay? We have to release it. And how do we do that? Number 1, recognize the gift of change. When change occurs, it's usually because bigger things, better things are about to evolve. To overcome the fear of change, we have to be able to recognize it acknowledge it without letting it control us. The key here is not to eliminate the fear, but reframe it. And we have to use that fear as motivation, not paralysis. Oh, is that hard? We have to recognize that there's a gift in change. When there's change, we're being called to evolve, and growth only happens when we leave our comfort zone. You have to understand that the fear of change is often the fear of not trusting yourself. But once you become open to the unknown and trust that you have the strength to face whatever is ahead, it becomes so much easier to move through the fear and break the cycle of avoidance and realize by avoiding change, you're accepting that you want to stay living in the same patterns that are causing you pain. Healing doesn't happen when we avoid or suppress the hard emotions. It happens when we confront and process them. By facing the hard things, you allow yourself to feel the pain, which is the first step in releasing it. And it's so uncomfortable. But growth comes from discomfort. Think about physical growth, okay? Let's think about this. We're going to go to the gym. We're going to go work out. Building muscle causes pain. It requires stretching beyond your comfort zone, doing the work, even if it's uncomfortable, right? So why is healing any different? By challenging ourselves to face the hard things, we begin to build emotional and mental resilience. And how beautiful is that? There's a saying that my mentor and friend says all the time, and it's come to be one that I just repeat in my head. I allow fear to hold me back in so many ways. And that saying is, do the thing that you fear, and the death of fear is certain. Fear can literally paralyze us in our tracks, but it doesn't have to. We don't have to wait for the fear to completely go away in order to take action. In fact, taking action is one of the only ways to actually overcome the fear. Did you know that when a storm is coming, a buffalo and a cow handle it very differently? Buffalo, yeah, they're known for their strength, okay? And they don't run from the storm. They run directly into it. They know that going directly toward the storm gets them through the storm faster. Whereas a cow on the other hand, well, they run away from the storm, which totally prolongs their suffering. Okay? And as they try to run away from the storm and run in circles around it, trying to get away from it, they end up staying in the storm longer. They can't escape it. By moving in circles and dodging which way and running from the storm, guess what? They end up getting hit by the storm. They try so hard to avoid what they cannot escape. How powerful is this lesson? When we face our challenges directly, like the buffalo, we get through them faster and we come out stronger on the other side. The sooner we can confront what scares us, the sooner we can grow and heal. There is so much beauty in facing the hard things, and you can't escape it. And while it may be so uncomfortable, this process is where true transformation lies. So be a buffalo, charge the storm, and remember, growth comes from discomfort. And the final takeaway today that I want you to know is you need to start with small and intentional steps. We've talked about recognizing your toxic patterns, giving yourself permission to heal, facing your fears. Now we need to take action and take those small intentional steps to our healing journey. Real lasting change, it's not one massive leap. When we try to do it all at once and heal all at once, all it does is create a sense of overwhelm, which then leads to complete burnout. And then the cycle repeats. Instead of focusing on the whole big picture, let's focus on one thing at a time. Let's be specific. What's one area that you can start with? Maybe it's setting boundaries, practicing forgiveness, or even working on your self-talk. We want to focus on consistency over perfection. You don't have to get it right every time. What matters is you keep showing up for yourself, even on the hard days. Because every time that you choose a healthier response, set a boundary, or show up for yourself, you are rewriting your old patterns. Like, how amazing is that? You have the power to rewrite your old patterns. That right there, that is healing in action. So pick one small, intentional step this week. Maybe it's saying no when you're already overwhelmed. Maybe it's picking up a journal and journaling for just 5 minutes. Maybe it's choosing self-care without the guilt. Whatever it is, give it your full and undivided attention for a set period of time. What is so cool about doing this is it actually creates like a ripple effect. So when you challenge the one thing and you actually change, it's going to give you so much more confidence to tackle the other things and find some way to celebrate yourself for taking that first action. Healing is a journey, and every step forward, no matter how small, is proof that you're doing the work. So please be patient with yourself and trust the process. Be so proud of yourself right now. Breaking the cycle and healing, it sucks ass, okay? It isn't easy. It takes awareness and courage and the willingness to walk into the unknown. You've already made it this far. You're choosing to heal and to grow. And that is powerful. So before we conclude this episode, let's go over our 4 takeaways. Number 1, recognize your toxic cycles. Number 2, give yourself permission to heal. Release the fear of change. And start with small but intentional steps. And for goodness sakes, charge the freaking storm, okay? We are buffalo, bitches, okay? We are buffalo. And the next time you feel like being a cow and running from the storm, remember you're going to have to face it anyways. So you might as well charge the dang storm. I want you to leave this episode today giving yourself grace, celebrating your progress. Trust that every step forward is a step towards creating the life that you deserve. If this episode resonated with you today, please make sure to subscribe to wherever it is you listen to all of your podcasts, because you are not going to want to miss the next episode. Also, if you know somebody in your life who could really hear this message today, please send it their way. You never know who's trying to heal and just doesn't know how. Thank you so much for listening. I love you so much, and I could not start my healing journey, and I could not continue my healing journey without you guys. So just remember, we are in this together, and I am so excited to see all of us grow and heal. I'm your host and your friend, Renee Spencer, and I will see you in the next episode.